Welcome back to the You Not Me podcast with Chris Behrmann. The Division I men's soccer championship just wrapped up the other day, and the Washington Huskies are the new national champions in college soccer. And Chris, your boys actually made it to the Sweet 16 this year with High Point men's soccer. I believe that's the furthest that High Point has ever gone. So congratulations to them on making new history. One of the things we've been thinking about as we've been watching the tournament unfold, and even some of the realizations you've had is you've seen your boys' season come to an end, is that no matter how your season ends, everyone's season will end. Even Washington, having won the other night, their season is now over. They did win with a trophy in hand, and High Point obviously did not take home the national championship. But the reality for all of them is going to be the same. For the seniors, their careers are over. For the rest of the team, they're going to go back, probably clean out their locker for Christmas break. The cameras have stopped rolling now for the Division I season, and life resumes as normal. And so whether you win the national championship, whether you lose in the final if you're NC State, whether you get to the Sweet 16, or whether you were the absolute worst team in the country this year in Division I men's soccer, which I'm not sure who that was. I have some guesses, but I'll keep those to myself. It's all the same. Still, whether you win or lose, the season will come to an end. Your career will come to an end. Not that much will change from person to person. Even if you go on to have a long and successful professional career, not that much changes. You're still going to have to face tomorrow at some point. So Chris, I know that these things have really been at the forefront of your mind recently. And, when you look at really winning, losing, and everything in between, what really lasts? And how can you really create purpose and find meaning in the midst of all of that if everyone just goes back into the same boat?
Yeah, it's interesting because when you look at what really lasts long term, it's your heart and how you choose to move forward to try to learn and grow and be the best that you can be, to use the gifts that you have to the best of your capabilities, versus trying to play for the applause of people and trying to have status and everything. That, again, to your point, whether it's the college soccer season coming to an end, with my boys losing a Sweet 16, their season was over. Or had they kept winning and won the national championship, they would have played 4 more games and still would have been over. And I think the biggest, it's kind of funny, there were 2 movies I've watched that are totally different movies, but had similar storylines. And the fact that in the movie F1 with Brad Pitt, he's an old race car driver that basically a friend brings out of retirement, and he starts driving for Formula One. And as he's going, one of the questions that keeps being asked to him is, why do you do it? And there's another person in the movie that they're also a Formula One driver on the same team. They're doing it for totally different reasons. He's doing it for the fame, the money, the applause, social media, all that stuff. And what Brad Pitt says to him is, he's like, man, that's just noise. And why Brad Pitt does it is to find that feeling of when he's in the flow. Like, he keeps searching and trying to hit that moment where he is doing everything to the best. And he says, it feels like I'm flying. The heart behind why they do those things is totally different. One is for wins and victory. The other one, he doesn't care if he wins. He just wants to hit that point to where he knows he's doing everything to the best of his ability. And he feels like he's in the flow. He's flying. The other movie is totally different. One of my favorite movies is called Arthur's Christmas. And for those of you laughing, it's a cartoon movie, but it's a brilliant storyline. And what ends up happening is you have 3 different people. One is a previous Santa, one is a current Santa, his son, and the other one, he has 2 sons. One is kind of basically running the family business, and he's doing all the tech and everything. And he's doing it because he wants to be Santa, like he wants the glory. And then the younger brother is kind of on the goofy side. He's not super techie on top of things, but he just has this amazing heart, and he wants to do everything. He doesn't want to be the front and center. He's happy being behind the scenes, and just, he loves what Christmas is about. He loves the fact of trying to make someone's day by, them feeling loved and opening a gift that they've asked for, etc. And at the end, what they end up finding is the youngest son ends up becoming the next Santa, because they all saw his heart was the pure one. His heart was for what was behind the meaning of what Santa was supposed to be, which is loving and making kids' days better. But again, I think in all of this is, where is our heart in what we do? Why do we do what we do? Because eventually, again, a game ends. Or if you're a pro, your pro career ends. If you work till you're 60 or 65 or 70, you end up retiring. Like, who are you? And is it based on all these things that you've earned and titles along the way and money in the bank or whatever? But those things can be lost in a heartbeat. But also, the deeper problem with all of this is so often people are just concerned with what other people think, how they're perceived, how they're judged. And we have all these social pressures, social media. I mean, we have different coaches, teammates, we have, bosses, we have spouses sometimes that put pressure on us. And really, it's again back to your heart. Why are you doing anything that you do? And a lot of times we don't think about it. Sometimes we just wake up and go to work because we think that's what we're supposed to do. But the question is, what are you doing? Why are you doing it? How are you doing it? And if your why that you're doing something is excellent, the deep why, the deep purpose, well, then how you do it is going to often be excellent as well. And the what doesn't really matter, because you're doing it for a greater purpose that is beyond the circumstances and beyond the title and beyond the role.
Yeah, I think that it's really easy for a lot of people to do things just to try and impress others, whether that's, directly like, showing off or something like that, or like classic player who's trying really, really hard to impress the coach instead of just being themselves, right? So they're trying a Hollywood pass every time they get the ball, or the hardest action on the whole field. And it's like, if you just be yourself, you'll probably impress me more than doing something really complicated that's successful, 1 out of 10 times. I think as well, people try to kind of avoid doing things if they know that they might fail. And people who do that end up really sacrificing their growth for their image. And I think that one of the subtle traps with all of this, really, if you look at, the Formula One and, even players who are playing Division 1 college soccer or Division 2 or 3 or, anything out there sports wise, career wise, is that people tend to want to prove their worth to other people through winning or achievement or making a lot of money or having a lot of status. And losing or failure or not measuring up to other people often feels like you're getting exposed. And it's really uncomfortable for a lot of people. But I think that the reality in all of this is that, like, those aren't lasting motivators. And I think that when people do discover success, like let's take Washington, for example, they just won. Probably in a week, it's not going to satisfy them anymore. They're going to have to find a new source of motivation. And so I think that one of the big things we're looking at in all of this is for people to really discover why it is they're doing what they're doing. And then based on why they're doing what they're doing, to kind of start to tap into how they're going to do what they do.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest issues too is when their self-worth is tied to outcomes, they start to really struggle, even if they're successful, because eventually, the applause fades. Eventually, nobody can win forever, right? But then also, then the problem is the expectations rise, and your fan base or your boss or your company expects you to win forever. And what often is seen in corporate America is, especially in sales, a lot of times you might be the number one salesperson, and then they put this crazy high quota on you, and then you become the bottom of the barrel. And it's like, well, did so-and-so forget how to sell or what they're doing, or is it just the quota or whatever? But the problem is success can actually be hard. The fact that if you have expectations keep rising and you keep striving to meet it, then you start to sacrifice things just to meet these expectations. People maybe don't even care about you. And I mean, again, you look at fan bases. I mean, it's amazing to see different college programs that have a number of winning years, and then they have a bad year, and then all of a sudden people are calling for a new coach, et cetera. But it's like that person probably hasn't changed what they're doing. It's just a cycle of players, maybe just other teams are good, whatever it is. Again, it goes back to, can you look at yourself in the mirror every night and say that I know that I did my best. I did it with a pure heart. I'm trying to learn and trying to grow and get better. And the results are what the results are, because if you only base your worth on results, At some point, you're going to lose. At some point, someone's going to be better. At some point, there'll be market conditions you can't control that cause you to maybe don't meet expectations that your company wants. And great managers, great leaders, they actually see the value in a person's heart and what they're doing, and they'll stand up and protect those people to their superiors. But the biggest thing is back to, if we please an audience of one, we should have peace and rest. But too often we try to please other people, and often we can't please everybody. People are fickle. But if we know that we've done our best, we can rest in that. And I think that's the key to all of this is knowing deep in your heart that you're doing the best you can, while also balancing rest and everything else, but to really grow and learn.
Yeah, I think that when it comes to growth, the greatest temptation that a lot of people face is this contrast between wanting to look good and kind of have all the benefits of growth that you can only get by going through that process. But a lot of people try and short circuit by being perfect, not making any mistakes. The classic example is like the athlete who just tries to play super safe every time. So they like never lose the ball, or so the coach never gets mad, or teammates never yell at them. But the fundamental difference is really the difference between looking good and actually getting better and growing. The people who are so preoccupied with looking good are often, as I said, going to reject any kind of behavior that would really stretch them or where they could potentially fail. They'll avoid failure at all costs. And in the end, unfortunately, they stay in their comfort zone so much that it ends up really hurting their long-term growth and potential and keeps them from that. Growth is one of those things that at the start, I think feels so uncomfortable and counterintuitive. It's always really ugly when you first start. Like, I don't know if anyone's ever tried to take up a sport like golf, like later in their life, but it's like, holy cow. Like, whenever I play with someone who's like first starting out, I'm like, dude, maybe it's not the sport for you. But like, there's people who have started out, you know, a total scrub, like whiff multiple times, right? And then in 5 years, like they're trying to get on the PGA Tour and are like a +5 handicap or something insane. Like happens all the time. Those people though, they make mistakes, they fail, you know, digging divots out of the ground, losing a dozen balls per 9 holes, whatever. But they do it again, they fail again, and then they're like, okay, I'm starting to figure this out after months, and with time, they're learning, and then after a long time, they grow. And I think that growth is one of those things that is so difficult for us because it takes so much time. Anyone who is a farmer or has grown up on a farm or has any relation to a farmer will know this. Like, the crops don't grow overnight. It takes a lot of work and investment for them to grow. You have to plant the seed in the right soil. First, you have to even dig the soil and make sure that it's fertile. It's soft soil as well, not just like planting something in a rock, right? So there's all this detail and preparation you have to do beforehand. Then you got to make sure the seed's in there right. They're spaced out, whatever. Then you got to water it. You got to make sure that it's getting the right amount of light, that it's not, planted in the shade where it can't grow. And you got to tend to it, and you got to rip up some weeds around it and all this stuff. And then eventually, after a full year, then you can go, nice, now I can get my corn or, whatever the heck you plant. Even, I remember one of my friends when I was living in Sweden planted an avocado tree, and I was like, oh, nice. Like, you get an avocado after like a couple months. And he was like, no, it takes 10 years. And I was like, what the heck? Like, what's the point, dude? Like, kind of investment is that, but like obviously the avocado industry is massive, right? But it takes a lot of patience to produce the harvest and to have those things grow over time. So what are maybe some practical just points of advice that you might give to people who are going, all right, kind of picking up what you guys are putting down. I want to grow, but I know that it's hard. How can I stay in it for the long haul so that with time I'm able to produce a good harvest, whether it's in sport, whether it's in life, relationships? I'm sure you probably have something to offer. So
I think to grow long term, obviously, you have to not be worried about what people see or think. You have to be willing to do things that kind of similar to the seed where you plant it and sometimes it just looks like nothing is happening for days, weeks, months. And even just like with you and I mean, the willingness to try and to do stuff with this podcast, like, I think hopefully in a year from now or more, like we'll be better. And it's, it's one of those things where if you are honest with yourself, if you're going to do the work that's uncomfortable, even back to what you said, um, as far as the appearance. And there are a lot of times, I mean, honestly, Andrew and I were sitting in a meeting the other day and we were chatting and went through some stuff. And I was like, oh my gosh, like if there was just a camera over there recording this, it'd been great. But I sit here with a camera on me, and just like the player that's nervous or how they look to whether a coach or whoever it is, I'm not the same person as I'm just having a regular conversation with somebody, because I'm thinking about what do people think about how I look or whatever, what I say exactly. And instead of just being free and just answering the question and walking through whatever it is I'm doing. And I think, again, if we're doing with the right heart for a purpose and we're trying to, improve others or try to help our customers or our kids or a wife, whatever it is, if we really are doing something that has a purpose greater than ourselves, that we're devoted to. Again, like your family, like I feel like my family should be my first ministry. That's who I should build in first and foremost. And it's sad to say that sometimes because of looks, other people get treated better than my family does, because sometimes I let the stress and everything just come out and I say something in a tone that I wish I hadn't. Or I huff and puff because I'm like, oh, another thing I have to fix or whatever that pops up, whether it's with my kids or whatever, where if I were in front of a customer, that wouldn't come out. And I would be, buttoned up and making sure it doesn't come out that way. And so again, back to like, what is the real priority? And for me, again, back to, knowing somebody that a number of people going through cancer, unfortunately, a friend that just passed from cancer. And it's like, all these things we stress and worry about don't matter. What matters is our family. What matters is our friends that are around us, and doing something that has long lasting and hopefully even generational impact, which is, again, loving our kids and our spouse so that our kids have a great example of what a loving marriage looks like, and how to treat their kids when they have kids. And so I think it's just really making sure that we're intentional about what matters most, and knowing that anything that we see in the future, there's I remember a poem I used to have up in my room when I was a kid. I think it was called The Station, but it was talking about like when you get to the station, I mean, it's like it doesn't end. There's more track. There's another station to go still, and another and another. And so it's like, again, whether it's getting your mortgage paid off, whether it's getting that car or getting that promotion, or you're finally retiring, well, guess what? You're gonna wake up tomorrow, and then what are you gonna do? Who are you? Why do you do what you do? Why do you get up every morning and get out of your bed? Because if you have a purpose of, again, you and I mean, this is why You Not Me was even created, right? It's because we've seen the greatest example of living for others, not ourselves. And that was what Christ did on the cross. And again, Christmas right around the corner, we celebrate his birth, and what he did something for us that we could never do. And in the big picture, what can we do for other people? And how can we live for them and not just for ourselves? Because when we do, that's when we're going to be able to persevere and work through the hard times and the trials and the circumstances that come, that most people will quit because they don't have a deep rooted purpose as to why they're doing what they're doing. And again, my sales goals, I don't care what the number is they give me. All I know is I'm going to go out and love my customers well. I'm going to care about my customers and their customers, and the people that are right in front of me at the grocery store or wherever it is, because I don't know how those people have or have not been loved. And I mean, what it means to not give up on somebody. Because what if you are one of the only people that has never given up on someone in their life? What you can do to impact their future, to be the wind at their back and the arms around them, to let them know that they're loved and valuable and cared for. That's one of the greatest gifts you can ever give somebody. It has nothing to do with money. It has nothing to do with, promotion, and nothing other than letting somebody know how valuable they are. And again, that starts with your family. That starts with the people right around you that you see on a regular basis, that you can have the most impact with, because you can consistently show that they matter. And that is one of the greatest things that you can do, and how you can keep growing even when the times are hard.
Yeah, and I think that now we've spent a good amount of time here touching on kind of how to keep going and how to, whether it's win, lose, draw, continue to grow in life, because obviously there are a number of things that last. The time will tick down in a game, the whistle will blow, your season will come to a close, and your career will end one day. It's the same for athletes, it's the same for corporate people, it's the same for even your life. But some things in life will endure. Who you become, the legacy you leave by offering yourself up for others, and even the glory that you give to your God. And so, Chris, I think just to wrap up, I would love for you to give 3 whys to the listeners that will outlive whether it's their season, their corporate career, or even their life that they can really invest into.
So I think what you really need to do is, first and foremost, keep going to become someone that you respect, someone that you know who you want to be, and you keep walking towards that. Next is keep fighting for something that's bigger than yourself, whether it's your team, the culture on your team, the people around you, your family, your community. And then finally, honor God with what you've been given, to use the gifts well. I read this awesome quote about Jesus the other day, and I just wanted to read it because it's so good. I, A, can't remember it, and B, I don't want to mess it up, but it said, Jesus, despite being absolutely approachable to the weakest and most broken people, he is completely fearless before the proud and the corrupt. Despite being profoundly human and becoming weary and lonely and moved to joy and love and anger, we never see him moody. We never see him inconsistent. He is tender without being weak, strong without being harsh, humble without the slightest lack of confidence. He has conviction without intolerance, enthusiasm without fanaticism, holiness without Phariseeism, and passion without prejudice. This man alone never made a false step, never struck a jarring note. This is life at the highest. And for me, I want to live that way. I want to live in the balance to where I'm going after something that is so powerful and impactful to other people. And also it impacts my life. When they're better, I'm better. And so ultimately it's finding, what is it that you care most deeply about? Who are the people around you that you can love well? And then can you just be consistent at it every day and have that balance to not be too far one way or the other, but so focused on the direction you really want to go that you don't deter either way.
Absolutely. Chris, thanks so much for the conversation today. You've got the closing word.
Love it. Thanks so much, Jared. Appreciate it. Thanks, everyone.